Well, I'm going to begin with a little bit of a tale, and it it's about a woman named Mildred. Now, I think everyone has had a Mildred in their town. She is the town crier. She was the kind of person who not only watched her neighbors, she monitored them. And no matter whether it was a package left on your front porch or the length of your grass or even whether you had neighbors over for dinner, Mildred knew about it. And she told the entire town what was going on. And one day, Mildred happened to be going to the nail salon. Now, you need to know that the nail salon was situated right next door to the town tavern. And the town tavern was open pretty much 24 hours a day. Mildred drove up and parked, and she looked over into the parking lot next to her, and she saw this beautiful red, brand new Chevy truck. And she knew who that truck belonged to. It belonged to Frank. And Frank had just moved in. Frank was kind of a guy who worked different odd jobs. And she said to herself, well, this is terrible. His truck's parked right in front of that tavern. I know what he's doing. And she walked over to a group of women who were milling about outside waiting for their nail appointment. And she said, do you see that? Do you see that? Isn't that terrible? That man is inside. His name is Frank, by the way. And he lives just on the outskirts of town, and I know what he's doing in there. He's drinking himself into a stupor, and I'm certain that he's an alcoholic. Well, Frank happened to walk out, and he heard everything. He heard everything that Mildred had said, and so he looked at her straight away, blank stare, didn't say a thing, didn't yell, didn't get defensive. Instead, he just walked away, and she thought to herself, well, I communicated the message, and I convicted his heart. She felt pretty self-satisfied with what she had done. Well, Frank had a different idea. And he went home, and then later that night, he got into his truck. He drove it over to Mildred's house. He parked the truck in front of Mildred's front door. He got out, closed the door, and went home. The next morning, Mildred awakened, and to her chagrin, there was Frank's truck right out on her front stoop. And all the neighbors were passing by. And as they did, they were smiling. Some were laughing. And all of them were shaking their heads, saying, we know what Mildred did last night. All of which leads to this, that judge not, why? Lest ye be judged. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Well, we're beginning in this sermon series. Last week, I kicked it off with the idea of telling the truth and that our words matter, that our words have power. The New Testament talks about the idea that our words can build people up or they can tear people down. They can lift entire societies or they can lead to the ruin of societies. That our words affect all of us. What we say matters. Everything we say matters. Now, that being said, that not every word is weighed equally, now is it? And sometimes there's a rule of thumb that if you speak words that perhaps are, let's say, critical, hypercritical of someone, and you say something that is untoward, you know that person gets injured. And what happens is that individual may not want to forgive you right away, and there is a reason for that, because they feel hurt. And the pain may run deep. Think of it this way. What if I shut your finger in the car door? You're not going to have kind thoughts about me, are you? You're probably not going to speak kind words to me. And that finger is going to hurt for quite a while, isn't it? It's going to hurt maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road, maybe even all day long. I think the same kind of thing happens when we speak words to each other that are hurtful. That what happens is that we're not always able to say, I forgive you right away, even though we ask and beg for forgiveness. Now, the man that wrote this letter that Pastor Ann shared with you, his name was James, and James was the brother of Jesus. And James, I think he understood the power of language because he watched his own brother stand up in front of thousands of people at times and preach to them and move masses. And so he knew the power of words. And he also was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And he probably also saw the downside of language too, how words can maim and injure and create conflict. And so he talked about this idea that our language matters. What we say, again, matters. And he described the human tongue this way. He said that the tongue is kind of like the rudder of a ship, or maybe the bit that you put into a horse's mouth. They can direct the horse and they can direct this mighty ship and take them great distances to great destinations. But if the tongue gets off course, then so too does the ship, so too does the horse, so too does the relationship, so too does your reputation. You see, words can afflict so much of who we are and what we're about, our character, our confidence, our career, can even lead to divorce in some cases. And he used another analogy, James did. He talked about the idea that words can be like a pilot light. And all you need is to flick your beck. You just flicker this little flame that can set an entire forest ablaze. You know, you talked about the terrible fires that are taking place in Spain and France now. My heart goes out to those people. I'm sure yours does too. But that's a powerful image of what James was trying to describe. Just all it took was a spark to make that happen. And all it takes is a spark to get you sideways with someone you love. All it takes is a spark to get your office to create conflict. All it takes is a spark to set forth a blaze, an entire organization, even a church. All it takes is a spark, he said. And then he goes on and describes that this whole matter is important, and he wants us to understand the gravity that the words we speak truly are important. Now, I want to say that, as I said in the beginning, that not all words are equal. And gossip is not the same, and it's not equal to rumors. Rumors are always unsubstantiated. Rumors are never confirmed immediately. And the difference is that sometimes gossip can be true and sometimes gossip can be not true. But when it comes to spreading rumors, rumor mongering, the fact is that we are perpetuating an untruth. That if we pass it along, if you will, we are only passing along misinformation. And I told you last week that words are somewhat emotional. They can engender in us a fire of feelings. And I introduced also this concept in psychology called anchoring. That when we first hear of an idea, if we first are the recipient of some message, we anchor ourselves in that message. Our very limbic system, our emotional center, wraps itself around that message, and we refuse to let it go. And even though and when there is additional information, maybe that true information that's added later on, we dismiss it. We are so enamored with that first piece of information that everything else that comes thereafter is fake news. You've heard that before. And we live in a culture where we are constantly inundated with rumor. I mean, go to the nail salon, ladies. I've stood outside waiting for my wife. I know what goes on there. Have you ever sat on the sidelines of a soccer game? Oh my gosh, I learn more about you than I ever want to know. In fact, I'm kind of curious sometimes. I hear things about myself, and I like to keep my ear to the ground. In fact, I find out that some people know more about me than I do. This is what's happening, and it happens in chat rooms, it happens on Facebook, it happens throughout all forms of media, it even happens on cable news networks. Yeah, it's happening. We're inundated with all this bad publicity. And there's an author by the name of Joyce Hansen. And I told you something last week. I said, the way that you deal with an untruth is really simple. You just stop. You don't say anything. And what Joyce says is very similar. She says people who spread rumors are like walking infections. The lying words from their mouths spread like disease from person to person. The only way to stop the disease is to keep your mouth shut. Just stop talking. Now, I'll tell you, that moment of silence is important because it gives us an opportunity to ask questions of ourselves. Just that momentary pause allows you to say to yourself, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if you answer no to any of those questions, then friends, listen to what Joyce Hansen says. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. You see, taking just a moment to step back, hit that pause button, can save a marriage, it can prevent a conflict, and it can help promote reconciliation. Just that simple moment of pause. Again, we hear a lot of chatter these days, but I oftentimes wonder how Jesus looks upon us and whether he shakes his head. I wonder if Jesus, were we to realize that he's in the room, would we keep talking? And I think of Jesus from the cross, and I consider all that he could have done to us. He could have said, God, Father, do you hear all that these people are saying about you, about me? Are you watching what they're doing to me and how they're treating me? You see, on the cross, the blood of Jesus, he allowed it to flow. And what happened was it not only covered our evil hearts, our sin, it also gave rise to the goodness and grace of his love. On the cross, you see, he could have done something. He could have just simply poured gasoline on the fire. Instead, he doused the fire of hell and death, with his very words of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And you and I have two buckets, don't we? We always have two buckets. We can always take a bucket that is filled with gasoline and we can pour it on the fire, or we can take the other bucket filled with water and douse the fire. Do you remember when you were a child? Maybe you sung the words that I sang. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say, for the Father up above is looking down in love. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. And I want to appeal to you that maybe you have been on the receiving end of someone's toxic language. Maybe someone spoke a harsh word to you yesterday, or maybe years ago, but the pain is still there. Perhaps you said something harsh or toxic to someone, and now a toxic river flows between the two of you, preventing you from reconciliation. I want to offer you an opportunity, maybe a golden opportunity, just to listen to God say to you, I'm still for you, and I'll help you. I'll forgive you if you give me a chance.